In Palestine, it is very important to laugh and share our stories. This was the beginning of the movement of a stand-up scene in Palestine.
يلا في 80 already. في عندنا full audience.
People are living under the occupation. How can they be funny?
We just look the news and we cry and we are very sad inside and we feel very complicated, but we must go and make a comedy show.
Welcome to the Palestine Comedy Club!
It's very beautiful feeling when you make people laugh. This is humanizing us as Palestinians.
Tell us like just some hardships when comedians are on the road in Palestine, what they have to go through to just say, do a gig 1 hour away.
Just to kind of set the stage, I think people often don't appreciate like the size of place we're talking about. So in the UK, we say it's like the size of Wales, but I think in the US, the equivalent would be maybe Delaware, like the state of Delaware. So it's not a huge landmass. So when you think about how many restrictions you're coming across, like hundreds of restrictions, checkpoints and things that you're coming across, if you were to imagine that in that specific landmass, that kind of gives you a sense of how easy it should be to go from like one end of Delaware to the other, right? Like it would maybe be a few hours or something. And in reality, it can be like an entire day or multiple hours that it takes you to get anywhere because of how many restrictions are in place, how long you can be held just arbitrarily at a checkpoint or something.
And also, for me, I was really surprised about the comedians and somehow with the trip we're going through and the stress on the difficulties, how in a moment they are on stage, they switch everything and become more people full of energy and happiness, reflect their joy and love to the audience. And for me, like, it's a game changer. It takes lots of power, you know what I mean? You're going lots of through stress, difficulties, long day traveling, and in a moment, politics, which everything would happen in your life and become a funny person to make other people laugh. For me, I found this is a very powerful. Not everyone can do these things.
Hi, I'm Charlotte, and I'm the producer and co-director of Palestine Comedy Club, the documentary.
I'm Regash. I'm the director of Palestine Comedy Club.
Yes, that is Charlotte Knowles and Regash, and you've tuned into another episode of Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon. Hello. And today we are going to talk about their new documentary, Palestine Comedy Club, which focuses on a group of Palestinian comedians who go out to create the first comedy scene in Palestine. It's a great documentary. I have seen it twice, and we are going to do a deep dive into the history of comedy in Palestine. But before we jump into the episode, a few quick plugs. On Thursday, May 7th, 7 p.m. at Under St. Mark's Theater, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a human rapper take on a machine learning AI in a comedy roast battle of tomorrow. And it gets better. On Friday, May 22nd, 8 p.m. at Frontier Tower in San Francisco. Guess what I'll be presenting? Yes, my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Rewind for previous description. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias at harmonleon. Also, show Comedy History 101 a little love and support. Everything helps. Give us no less than 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, or on our site, comedyhistory101.com, or on Instagram, comedyhist101, or on our YouTube channel, which is really my YouTube channel, at Harmon Leon, where we have the video versions of all our episodes. And now, without further ado,
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Comedy History 101. Really nice meeting you. I guess in film terms, this would be called Take Two.
Exactly. Regash, we did this, we did an interview already, Harman and I, but there was an audio problem, which is why I took the opportunity to bring you in as well.
Regash, where are you currently?
At the moment, I'm in the West Bank in Palestine, Ramallah.
Oh, wow, okay.
But in the past 6 years, I'm living between Ramallah and Nablus.
And did you go over to the UK for some of the screenings?
Yes, I did. For the last things, I was there in November and December. And also I was there for the post-production. But unfortunately, I couldn't be there for the premiere because of visa issues, as you know.
And just to jump in, first of all, congratulations on the film. It's funny, it's touching, it's topical, it's inspiring. For those who haven't seen the documentary, just maybe give us a bit of a synopsis.
First of all, me and Charlotte, we never met. And once there was this call, they need a filmmaker for their project. And a friend of mine, one of the artists and the founders of Palestine Comedy Club, he also sent me the link to apply. And then we applied. And after that, we met. And at the beginning, it was a short film idea. Charlotte said, time to change the game. We have lots of materials, lots of things going here in Palestine. It's a shame to not to make it as a feature film. We had no budget, we had no nothing, just me and Charlotte and the crew.
And Charlotte, on your end, how did the film come about for you?
So I had been working with Alaa Shahade and Sam Beale before. So because I had been working in Palestine for about 4 years by this point. So this was in 2021. I had met Alaa when I saw his show in London. He had a comedy show in London. And I went to the show, and it was just so different from working as a journalist previously, like anything that I had seen about Palestine. And it just showed me, as someone who quite naively thought they knew quite a lot about Palestine by this point, I knew nothing. And like the comedy really shows you that, because you see a side to life in Palestine and Palestinian culture through comedy that you just can't see through journalism, and particularly through like a white European lens, like telling the story. So that was my kind of introduction to comedy in Palestine, was through Alaa. And then I met him afterwards and kind of tracked him down on Instagram and encouraged him to come for a coffee with me, and just asked him what he was like, where this was all going, like what his plans were. And I just said how much I love the show. And he said, well, I really want to expand on it. I want to make it bigger. And I think that comedy is a really great way of me being able to connect with other Palestinians. Like, because I think the assumption is that you see a like North American, British, European device, like stand-up, right? Which is very, very common in the UK and in the US and in Europe. But it's not so common in other parts of the world as a device for comedy. And so your assumption might be that if somebody wants to use it in somewhere like Palestine, it's because they want to speak to the US, the UK, Europe, right? But that was not Alaa's intention at all. He really wanted to use it as a way of getting to know other Palestinians that he was divided from as a result of the occupation. And I just thought it was brilliant, and I was so excited about it. And so just started trying to help any way I could, really. Didn't really think there was a film at this point. I was just interested in helping. Met Sam, we all went to Jenin. They started doing this work in camps and in women's centres and community spaces. And within a few weeks of doing workshops, they had hundreds of people signing up wanting to be part of it. And so it just kind of mushroomed. And then at a later stage, Sam and Alaa realized, okay, there's a show in this, like there's a show that could be developed. And if we find enough performers, because there's no comedy scene, so therefore there's no stand-up comedians really across Palestine typically. So the idea was to bring together 6 performers and then to help them to develop these sets that would then become a show, which would then go on tour. And that's when I thought, okay, now there's a film. Because I thought, right, there's this journey, this is going to be a really incredible experience. But as Regash said, I thought, okay, maybe it's a short film. And then I said to Alaa, like, this film needs to be told by a Palestinian, can't be told by me. Like, we need to find some people that could be involved in this, that would be able to tell it from a Palestinian perspective. So Allah said, you've got to meet my friend Regash. So I said, okay, great. So he showed me Regash's work, his photography, and it's so beautiful. And all of the street photography that Regash does, it's so like jam-packed with stories, and you can see the irony and the comedy just like exploding out of these images of everyday life in and around Nablus, Ramallah, like everywhere where Regash was taking photos. And so when Allah showed me that, I was like, yeah, okay, obviously this person has to be involved. And then I met Regash, and as you'll soon find out, listeners, Regash is an absolute ray of sunshine. And so I thought, okay, this is brilliant. So it was a tiny team, just me and Regash, like running around like headless chickens, doing everything. But then, yeah, as soon as we got on tour, it was just, it was one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And I just said to Regash at a certain point, you would just keep filming. Let's just keep filming everything. I don't know where this is all going to go, but we need to capture everything. We've got so much, and let's see where, and then eventually it became a feature. So kind of grew sort of organically, really, out of that.
And Regash, what is the history of comedy in Palestine? Was there stand-up before this group got together? Or like when you were growing up, what was like comedy you were listening to, or influences of people?
For the comedy history in Palestine, like stand-up comedy is not from our culture, but you can find comedy everywhere in our daily life, because we're really good how to flip everything from the sadness to make it more stronger between ourselves, between what's happening. So wherever you go, to your uncle's house, to your family's house, in the street, to the market, to the bus, everywhere you can find comedy. There were no any stand-up comedy scene before in Palestine, but when this movement started, like with the Palestine Comedy Club, everybody wanted to give a chance. That's when stand-up comedy scene started, but they needed someone to lead them and put it on the stage and make it a better scene for the stand-up comedy.
And how did Sam, who's the producer of the live show in the documentary, how did she first connect with the group of comedians?
Sam had actually worked with Allah previously. So the show that I saw in London was their first encounter. So that was called Showtime from the Frontline, and it was with the British comedian Mark Thomas. And so Sam had worked with Mark for many years, and Mark had done a number of things in Palestine, which had led him to working at the Freedom Theatre, doing some work at the Freedom Theatre in Jenin, which is where Allah was studying theatre. And this all eventually led to Mark doing some workshops in stand-up comedy at the Freedom Theatre with the students there. And when he went, he took Sam with him, because Sam is an absolutely incredible teacher and educator, academic. She's also Dr. Sam Beale. So she worked as an academic for many years in comedy. And so they worked with the students at the Freedom Theatre. And again, I think quite organically, they, out of the work they had been doing, that also evolved into this show, which Mark hadn't really anticipated, but eventually ended up bringing Allah and another comedian, Faisal, to the UK to do this show. So those workshops, that experience, and then that eventual show was Allah and Sam's first meeting. So when I met with Allah in the coffee shop, he was already telling me about Sam, and that he'd been speaking with Sam about, could they do more? Could they go to more places? Could they, he was just talking about, I want to know what makes people laugh. I want to know what cracks people up. And I want to use this as a way of finding that out. So that was how they first got together.
And so it's interesting, the diverse styles of comedy of the comedians in the group. Could you maybe just tell the listeners, kind of breakdown of each comedian and their different styles, which is also, as you say in the documentary, a reflection of the different, senses of humor throughout the region.
Regash, do you want to do that? Like, how are each of them defined? How would you define each of the comedians?
Wow, that's so hard to describe, to be honest, because in our daily life it's so hard to meet with this different type of people, even like we're just 1 hour away from each other, just for the recorders. And for me, it was really interesting and mind-blowing at the beginning. For example, like if you go for Diana, first thing you see a woman with hijab. you do not expect what you will see from her. She is always surprising you with a boob energy and how brave she is, like with everything on stage without doubting or being afraid of someone or the culture of anyone judging her. So fresh, so full of energy, always active, full smile. You have Charlotte from Khalil Ibron. For me, at the beginning, like I was not expecting to see an old man doing stand-up comedy. Like this is unbelievable to see it in Palestine, like, because for someone in his age, he has family, he has kids, or everybody looking at him a different way. But he was not caring about all of these things, and he is so good with how to make you laugh, how to make you laugh. I'm not from Haifa, calm as sea, but strong at the same time. When you look at him, he's so calm, so doing nothing. But once he speaks, you cannot stop laughing at home. He's one of my favorites, to be honest. Ida, it's from Golden High. He's full of energy, very loud, a very sensitive person, but he's really good also how to make you laugh and how to talk about a story pie between living in Golden High. Khalil from Hebron also very energy, very like he's always hyper person. It's so hard to catch him sitting back. He's a person who cannot sit. He's always moving. He's always moving. Even in the break time, he's always moving. And make sounds. He's really good with music. So every time he's playing some music, some sounds from everything he catch. And he really also know how to make you laugh. For Ala from Janine, is a crazy person to control everything. And there is really nice thing about Ala is always more what to put and when. That's like he's really good with the timing and the jokes. Like he plays it very well. But yeah, for me the team was a big surprise. I'm really proud to be a part of this chance to see all these different cultures in a small room for a month together and touring around, exploring our culture, our personal thoughts, everything.
As you mentioned, like different cultures, within one, smallish sort of region, how different would the audiences be in reactions to, say, the same joke in a different place? And second part of that question would be like, how edgy could you get like pushing the line, but with not going over the line, or what is that line?
To be honest, it's always very tricky and very challenging. You're going to audience, they see you in stand-up comedy for the first time. And there is lots of jokes, same jokes. Sometimes it's working in this city, but sometimes it's not working with the other cities. Not because it's a bad joke. It's just because this joke, they didn't live it in the same way the other city they live in. So we always had this challenge. And not everything worked everywhere. We had this upside down. But the comedians, they were really good, smart with it, because sometimes in cities you can say there is a limit for what you say, but in other cities you can say everything freely without anything to be afraid about.
Yeah, and I think Hannah said it in the film that a friend of his was arrested for something he posted on social media. Could the same have happened to comedians for what they say on stage?
The main time, yeah, there is lots of restrict about these things. I'm not say anything we want, not share anything we want, especially lately with what current situations that are happening around. Many years ago it was much better, much safer, much easier. But the main time, you might face lots of trouble.
I mean, again, what really connected me with the film is, because I'm a comedian and my community is comedians and people being on stage with microphones trying to make people laugh, and to see the world through the eyes of comedians and the hardship which comedians have to go through to just travel to do a gig and have to go through like 900 checkpoints just to go an hour, that just really connected. Tell us like just some hardships when comedians are on the road in Palestine, what they have to go through to just say, do a gig 1 hour away.
Just to kind of set the stage, I think people often don't appreciate like the size of place we're talking about. So in the UK, we say it's like the size of Wales, but I think in the US, the equivalent would be maybe Delaware. like the state of Delaware. So it's not a huge landmass. So when you think about how many restrictions you're coming across, like hundreds of restrictions, checkpoints, and things that you're coming across, if you were to imagine that in that specific landmass, that kind of gives you a sense of how easy it should be to go from like one end of Delaware to the other, right? Like it would maybe be a few hours or something. And in reality, it can be like an entire day or multiple hours that it takes you to get anywhere because of how many restrictions are in place and how arbitrarily how long you can be held just arbitrarily at a checkpoint or something. So I just kind of wanted to make that point because I think for UK listeners particularly as well, it's hard for us to, when you imagine it in such a small landmass, it kind of brings it home a little bit, like what we're talking about in terms of those restrictions. But for you, Regash, can you tell us maybe more about the specific restrictions? Because it's changed since we were there, right? Like since we were filming to now, it's even more restricted than it was.
Yeah, now it's really a complicated situation. For example, last month I've been held at checkpoint for 8 hours, waiting them to be open. And at the end, after the 8 hours, they didn't open, so they sent us back again. Then we had to find a place to stay at, and the other team they have been searching for a place to stay at, so stayed up all night in a cafe. When we come around 3 or 4 in the morning, then we drove again. Not really safe to move around, especially in the night time. Each city, each town, there is entrance, there is exit, there is a checkpoint. They control everything. For me, like, of course, I've never worried about moving around, but lately I do a lot because it kills your days, it kills your energy, and sometimes you miss your work, you miss everything. So for me, when I'm moving around between cities in that day, I'm not doing anything. It's a day off because I never know when I'm arriving or not. When we've been filming that film, you're going in a way you never know what you will find. For me and Charlotte also small stressful because we had our cameras with us, we have been filming. And also, for me, I was really surprised about the comedians and somehow, like, with the trip we're going through and the stress on the difficulties, how in a moment they are on stage, they switch everything and become more people full of energy and happiness, reflect their joy and laugh up to the audience. And for me, like, it's a game changer. Like, it's a lot, it takes lots of power. You know what I mean? Like, you're going lots of through stress, difficulties, long day traveling, and in a moment, politics, which everything would happen in your life and become a funny person to make other people laugh. For me, I found this is a very powerful. Not everyone can do these things. And also, we have the difficulties and with going from the West Bank to the 1948 down for us at the West Bank falls because to go there you need a permission and to make this permission it's not really easy. So the team they have been able to make a permission for one day and spend the other 4 days without any permissions, which is illegal somehow. So there was lots of stress about what if they caught one of them, what if they caught us. There is no tour filling up us in a prison or what will happen. Or there was always stress. Like you feel the dangers everywhere, but we were going on with the journey and do our best to it.
Yeah, I mean, just to put stress on it, it's just like, you're given a certain hour pass, like say when you're went to perform in Haifa and you have to be out, in that time frame. And I think some of the things that you said, you had to say at checkpoints, you're going because of back pain or something to that effect. And when you were there, you had to like pose as European tourist just to not be harassed.
Yeah, and the irony is like you're going to all these places and like Regash saying, we also as a team, we didn't really know always, like as outsiders like me and Sam, we didn't always know like the extent to the dangers always because as Regash points out, everybody's making a joke out of it, and trying to be super relaxed and acting like we're all on holiday having a really fun time because of the fact that if we didn't and it would look suspicious and then they could well be picked up. So, to the point about, what you can say, even just being in some of the places we were in was enough to be arrested. So there was so many dangers around every corner trying to put this tour on. For me, like the reality of how challenging it was didn't really fully register until we actually were back and we could talk about it a bit more openly. Because whilst we were there, it was really just like, let's make the most of this opportunity. They're going on stage every night. They have to be in the right headspace for that. But it's really, and if people watch the film, you can see much more how dangerous that really was for everybody, because it was, you know, just to do something like something that we just take for granted. We take for granted being able to go on stage, perform, create art, move around, set up a scene, put a kind of community together, have interconnected venues where everybody can go and something can thrive. We take that for granted so much. And you see in a place like Palestine, that's just not possible, you know, and to see people just doing it anyway is so amazing to me, to see that happening.
Was there events that happened during the day that affected the performers at night and their performances? I mean, you said, you know, obviously they put on the comedian persona, they could turn it on because they're pros. I mean, I sometimes have a bad show because I read like a bad comment on, you know, social media about me, along with, you know, stress, you know, from all the challenges. Was there any moments like that?
There was a moment when Riot did actually get sick, and, you know, we had to try and find a way to help him without him effectively risking arrest, because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he went on stage that night, you know, and he had kidney stones. So that was, you know, really stressful. And he was in a really, really tough place. But there was no question for him that he was going to go on stage that night and perform, you know, because that was what he was there to do. I think it was amazing to everybody, really, that he wanted to do that and that he could do that, because it just shows you the kind of level of determination that the group had to really make it work.
And when Allah went to the UK, it made me laugh when he said, when people hear his jokes, they don't like first laugh. They think of it as, comedy. Like, you're making me think. When, you know, sometimes he just wants to make, you know, jokes about his belly or something. But it's like, so that really made me laugh. And another interesting thing he said was, you know, when you talk about Palestine, that in itself, like in the UK, becomes a political statement. How did you find the crowds in the UK? Were they coming mostly as a comedy crowd, where you come, you know, Comedy Edinburgh Festival to laugh, or were they giving it more that comedy, we're hearing a political statement rather than a comedy show, or that balance of the two?
I think in the UK, and just to emphasize that, unfortunately, when we were filming, because we didn't expect to be filming in London for so long, and you see in the film that when they came to London, they landed on October 7th, just as this the genocide is starting. So we didn't know that was going to happen, and Regash wasn't with us for that bit of the filming. But the audiences in London and across the UK, I think, for the comedy shows, I think it's a real mix, because there's also a mix of people. So there's a mix of people. There's a Palestinian diaspora. There's diaspora from other countries as well, Arabic-speaking countries. So I think depending on who you are and depending on how you connect to the content, what's online, what's on stage, you'll have a slightly different reaction. But definitely, I think there's, amongst British people, there's for sure like a nervousness. I mean, we've had this with the film so many times. People coming and feeling like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm coming to see. And being really surprised when they leave about how much they learn, how much they understand. But also, one really nice thing that people say to us is how empowered, and this is for live and for the film as well, is how much more empowered they feel to actually have a conversation about any of this. Because I think there's a feeling that this is like, it's too complicated, you can't get involved, don't try and have a conversation unless you've got like a PhD in all of these like topic. And so when people come to see the film, and it's a really human film, and people are seeing, you know, human beings and engaging on a really human way, it gives people a little bit more confidence to realize this is a story about human beings, and we're all human beings, and we can all have a perspective on this, and actually talk about it. So that's been really nice. But Regash, when you've been here screening the film, what's been your impression of audiences? Because maybe you have a different impression to me.
It was a really crazy feeling and moment. And the first of all, seeing all these people coming to see then I've been directed by you big part of it. Like it's the first thing happening in my life, my entire life. For me, it's been so emotional and feel so happy and proud of me and of the team and Charlotte and everyone who was being able to make this work, which did. While I was seeing the people reaction, like was really like it's so hard to describe this moment, and you see them laughing, they see them crying, they get so emotional, they get stressful about it and about everything in the film. You could feel how it's touching then. That was a new thing for me, a new feeling.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not laughing, you're crying, and if you're not laughing, there's no hope. Just a couple last questions here. What was the most you laughed during production?
I mean, it was like every day, every single day. I'll just let you in on something for Regash. Regash's nickname was the vibes because he always brings the vibes. I think probably because this is not related to the film. And sorry, Regash, if I'm giving information that you wanted kept secret, but Regash had different outfits for like different moments. And do you remember this? And so like that would be depending on what you were doing, Regash would just like arrive in a different outfit. And it would always be about like setting the tone for the day was like what Regash was wearing. And so sometimes it would be like a kind of clubbing outfit, and other times it'd be like a serious, like super like chic outfit. And then on the last day of filming, it was the last day of the tour, and we had gone to Janine, and they couldn't do the show. And so we went to kind of, that was the end, like that we'd come to the end of the tour kind of quite abruptly. And we had just an opportunity to just kind of like let it all out, like it'd been, particularly for Ala, it had been so stressful. Like the amount he was carrying on his shoulders that whole time, the whole show, everybody trying to keep the vibe together, trying to keep it all like gelling and stuff. Everybody just kind of got to like release on that final day. And I think probably that final day, and particularly because Regash's outfit was so epic that day. I wish I had a photo, but I don't.
That was a special one.
It was a gorgeous outfit. I mean, every day was like that, wasn't it? It was like the biggest laughs probably were when we had the biggest stress, right? Because I think probably after the checkpoint, once we got through the checkpoint as well, like that was another time when everyone was just like, finally you can breathe again, like, and that was when we would have the biggest laughs, I think.
Yeah,
so
and just to tell listeners, they were stuck for like 8 hours, I think, at that checkpoint.
We were stuck for a really long time. I can't remember exactly how many hours it was, but it was a really long time, the checkpoint. And, it's a complicated process. The team was all divided up. People with British passports or Israeli IDs were gone through one direction. And then all the teammates from the West Bank had to go through another space. So we were all divided. We weren't able to see each other for a long time. And we didn't know whether everybody would get through, actually, because we had all this issue with permissions and everything. We didn't know if they would make it, and we couldn't film it. And like everybody was on real tender hooks. And it, it would have been possible. There was a possibility that everybody got arrested right there at the checkpoint. So everybody was really stressed and anxious. And I mean, from my perspective, I was just sitting, waiting for everybody, feeling really anxious. But Regash, you were actually going through the checkpoint with everybody. So, I mean, what was your experience? Because you had a different experience to me, obviously.
For us, like in the beginning, when we entered a checkpoint, there was a small shop beside where they sell hats. I saw it. Okay, guys, let's get that hats off. It's for the vibes, We're going to the beach. Let's have the beach vibes. But we never know who will be able to cross or no. But we take it. We never lose anything. And once we entered the checkpoint, was the least stressful one because they took our belongings, our phones, our fingerprints. They question you. You have to wait until your turn comes, so you cannot move until you get the order. So it was really hard one, stressful one, but يعني we used to these things in our daily life because we crossed lots of checkpoints. But that one was different because at the same time we never know. We don't know about the other team because they took other way with the bus. So if everything's going fine with them or not the same situation. But at the end, you have been able to go out. The first week we have done. Let's celebrate and take a selfie. That's the first thing we have done, and then we went and we have seen the other team have been there waiting for us. And yeah, after that, you could see the happiness even in the film itself.
Yeah, just to let people know, after this very stressful, long checkpoint stop, the team came out in matching beach hats that they bought at the gift shop.
I mean, we were calling it a gift shop, but it's like just a guy, right? A guy who set up a store with hats
Yeah, Paul, exactly.
because people are just kept for so long. Like people are kept so long in the sun, and people are standing out in the sun, waiting for hours. So somebody's just set up a little store with some hats, right? And so we were making a joke saying they'd gone to the gift shop, which is why it took them so long. But it was just oh man, I was so relieved. I was so relieved to see them, but also so relieved to see them just making a total mockery out of the whole situation. Oh, it's really funny.
Just two last questions. Towards the end, some of the people moved away. Some of them moved to Amsterdam and in the UK. Where stand-up or comedy in Palestine stand today?
It's so hard to make stand-up comedy here in Palestine. There is always difficult, hard situations going around. Lots of killing, arresting, pumping. So there is no space to do stand-up comedy. It's not really safe even to stay here. Some of the comedians, they had to leave Palestine. That way they can see more helpful to help their family, to continue well with what they're doing, to find a new way, a new space, a new place to make comedy even in other place. And the idea of this Palestine Comedy Club when it started is to make a big stand-up comedy scene. But you start something and you never know what's happening tomorrow or the next hour or anything. So you don't have any control on everything. So you have to adapt, to be honest. The first 2 years, they were the most difficult. Now it starts to get much better. But every time you try to breathe, you get snapped other way. So air was always, there is something happening over you and over everything going around.
Just lastly, just because my podcast is Comedy History 101, what is Palestine Comedy Club's place in comedy history?
I mean, it's the first, as far as maybe Regash, you know better than me, but as far as I understand, it's the first attempt to put together a stand-up comedy scene in Palestine. And there obviously there have been stand-up performers that have gone to Palestine and have performed there, like probably from outside. And then there are stand-up comedians that have come from Palestine, but there are no clubs, there's no circuit, there's no interconnected network that there is in other places. And that was what Palcom, that's what Palestine Comedy Club was trying to do. That's what we filmed, was them trying to put this circuit together, to take the show around, to kind of try and lay down some groundwork that could ultimately then have brought about a comedy scene. And I mean, just to kind of show you how far things have moved from where we started, during that time, Allah and Sam were talking about, would there be some possibility to have like a physical club? Like, could there be a physical space? Could there be a partnership with the theatres, so that the theatres themselves had regular comedy nights? And could there be some way of bringing some kind of consistency to this, so that more comedians could see it, be drawn to it, kind of develop their skills, develop their sets, develop their material, and ultimately kind of start to grow? I mean, we're so far from that now, as Regash says, like in terms of what's possible today, and also what people have the appetite for as well, understandably, like at a time when there's just so much destruction. But that had been the dream, and that dream is what became the film.
And where can people find the film? It's screening now in Ireland or UK?
Yep. So we're going into cinemas in Ireland in May. We're kind of going from sort of city to city in America, sort of slightly more ad hoc, because wherever there's a festival that invites us, we go, or wherever there's like a special screening opportunity, we go. Distribution in the US now is obviously much harder than it was for obvious reasons. But yeah, people can see it on the big screen in Ireland, and hopefully soon also across Spain, Germany, and Italy. And then it'll be out on the small screen towards the end of the year. But if people go to palestinecomedyclub.com, or if they go to toughcrowd.uk, which is the production company, then they can find access to it on the events page there as well.
Well, thank you so much. It was a really, it's really funny, touching, inspirational film. Thanks so much. Again, I'm glad we got our second conversation in. And Regash, really nice meeting you as well.
Thank you so much. Lovely meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Harmon.
Thank you.
Speak
Take
soon.
care. Bye.
Bye.
And with that, we wrap up today's episode on Comedy History 101. We schooled you in comedy. The few quick plugs: May 7th, 7 p.m., under St. Mark's Theater, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Friday, May 22nd, 8 p.m., Frontier Tower, San Francisco, AI versus Human Roast Battle. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, on the social medias at harmonleon, and show Comedy History 101 some love. Give us no less than 5 stars on Spotify, iTunes. Leave a comment on our site, comedyhistory101.com. Check us out on Instagram, comedyhist101, or our YouTube episodes at Harmon Leon, which is actually my YouTube channel. And until next time, bye-bye.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone.
Comedy History 101.